Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to another edition of Your Move, where I analyze chess.com member games. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and check out my website at mvpchess.com or by scanning the QR code below. Okay, so today we're going to review a game submitted by Blackhole7625, chess.com member named Cy Ritvik, who's from Germany, rated 1626. His opponent, Big Pocket MC, rated 1593, is from the United Kingdom. And just as a reminder, I am analyzing this game without the use of an engine, and I do that to promote active learning, not only in my own games, but those of my students, so that we can better identify the critical positions in our chess games. Okay, enough of that. White opens with e4, and black opts for the French defense. Very solid opening. Personally, I play either e5 or c5. That's what I recommend to my students, just to fight for control over the center on move one. But of course, the French defense e6 is a highly respectable opening, totally playable. And white opts for knight f3. I would have liked to see white play the principal move d4 here. Okay, black is not putting a pawn on e5 or c5 controlling the d4 square, so white should respond in principled manner and gain a rock-solid pawn duo in the center of the board. But knight f3 is the developing move on the king side, should be okay. Black strikes in the center with d5. One thing to notice about black's pawn structure in the French defense is that he has pawns on light squares, so long term it may be an issue developing this light squared bishop. Okay, this is called the bad bishop in the French defense for a reason. So we'll see if black is able to solve that problem or not. White pushes ahead, e5, gaining space, avoiding an exchange, and then strikes in the center with d4. And black's idea in the French defense is to pressure this pawn on d4. Okay, this was something that Aaron Nimzovich wrote about in my system like 100 years ago. And that is when your opponent has a pawn chain, you want to attack that pawn chain at the base. And he used the French defense as an example in that book. So black continues with that plan. Knight c6, pressuring d4. White reinforces with c3. And then black brings in another piece to attack d4. Queen b6. And after bishop b2, knight e7, white plays b3 here. This was a slow move. Let's jump back. In this position, it's white to move. Notice black has just played knight ge7 with the idea of coming to f5 and putting even more pressure on the d4 pawn. Okay, so white needs to anticipate this plan by his play and respond quickly so that he can meet knight f5 comfortably. What should white play in this position? Okay, as I mentioned in the game, white played b3, which was an inaccuracy. White should anticipate black's plan of knight f5 with knight a3. You hear that knights on the rim are dim, but don't worry, this knight is not staying here long. The idea is to meet knight f5 with knight c2, putting another defender on the d4 pawn and not obstructing the queen's defense of the d4 pawn. So that would have been, I think, the most prudent way of responding to knight g7, knight f5 idea by black. b6 is just too slow. Because after knight f5, bishop e3, there's a problem in white's position. Over to you. If you're black here, how are you going to take advantage of this bishop coming to e3? Pause your videos and try to find the best continuation for black in this position. Okay, In the game, black captured on e3, which I think is a mistake for a couple reasons. Instead, black could have taken this opportunity to capture on d4 and then play this annoying check, bishop b4 check. Now, white would love to be able to play knight bd2 to block this check. The problem, again, this d-pawn. This d-pawn. You know, it constantly needs protection of by white's pieces. So in this position, white would pretty much be forced to play king f1, which is not a very desirable move. It's not the end of the world, but it's really going to affect white's coordination on the king side. So this would have been a nice way for black to displace white's king and have the relatively safer king going into the middle game. But instead, black captured on e3. And I think this is a mistake for two reasons. Let's go back. Number one, ask yourself, which minor piece is better here? This knight on f5 or this bishop on e3? It's definitely, in my opinion, this knight on f5. This bishop on e3 is really acting almost as a tall pawn. You know, you can think of it. It has very limited scope. You know, it's staring at the pawn here. White has a central pawn chain on dark squares. And it's really not providing much in terms of active play for white. Meanwhile, this knight on f5, it's a very active piece. And it's putting annoying pressure on white's center. But by capturing on e3, not only are you giving up arguably the superior minor piece, you're also allowing white to capture f takes e3 and really fortify the pawn on d4 and therefore the whole pawn chain. So I think this bails white out kind of a bit. Black did a really nice job in the opening, seizing the initiative and really pressuring white's center, but black, unfortunately for him, missed the key variation that would have led to an opening advantage. Okay, but the game continues. Black plays bishop e7 and continues developing in both sides' castle. Good job by both players getting their kings to safety. And then white takes the time to improve the scope of this bishop. Now that white doesn't have to worry about the defense of the d4 pawn, it's rock solid now that we have this newfound pawn on e3. White brings the bishop to its best square on d3. That's ideally where you would like the light squared bishop in the French defense, on this diagonal, shooting like a laser towards black's kingside. Black plays f6. This is a very common pawn break in the French defense to try to undermine white's strong point on e5, and also to open the f-file and get the rook into the game. White plays bishop c2 here with the idea of playing queen d3. Not sure if this was the best option in this position, although this plan worked out very well for white, as we'll see. I think it would have been better, more prudent to play knight bd2 in this position. You know, generally speaking, you don't want to move the same piece more than one time in the opening, if you can avoid it, until you've completed your development. And with bishop c2, this will have been the third time that white has moved this piece in the opening. So I would have liked to see white play knight bd2, get the queen off the back rank, connect the rooks before making another move like this. But okay, it comes with a very concrete idea, which is to play queen d3 and hit this h7 pawn here. So black takes this opportunity to capture on e5, exchange, and okay, I think black's kind of succeeded, you know, in his goal of playing f6 and undermining white's strong point on e5. But after bishop d7, queen d3, Okay, now white's got a little bit of an initiative on the king side. You'll notice one thing that this pawn on e5 does. With a pawn on e5, there's never a knight on f6. And that can make the king side a little bit more vulnerable to attack. And it can be a spearhead that white can use to really launch a devastating attack on the on the king side, rather. So, since there's no knight on f6, this really provokes black into playing a really undesirable move, pawn to g6. Notice the king is really starting to get drafty here. There's no pawn on f7. The f-file's open. These dark squares around black's king are potentially weak. And now black has given white a little something to bite on. Something that white can use to potentially open the king side with decisive effect. Let's see what happens in the game. Okay, white continues development, knight bd2. I definitely think that's the best choice. And black plays rook c8 here. If I'm black in this position, I'm playing rook f8. This is the open file on the board. This is where the rooks belong. I don't really see what the long-term prospects are of the rook on c8, because white can keep the c file closed after c4. You know, white's got this square locked down. So I think the rook would have been better placed on f8 than c8. But rook play is hard to master. It's hard to know sometimes where you should be bringing your rooks. Rook f1. Okay, I think white made the right decision. Saying to black, okay, you're going to play rook c8. I don't know what the rook's doing there. I'm going to bring my rook to the only open file on the board and play rook f1. Good choice by white. And black continues with this plan of trying to get something going on the c file, but it never comes to fruition because white just has his lockdown. He takes cd. I think black recognized this. He also noticed I can't really take back because my bishop would be hanging. I'll just show this real quick after DC rather. So black instead opts for some counterplay. First, he decides to attack this weak pawn on e3. I think this move's a bit artificial. You know, I would much rather have this bishop back here on the king side defending these really weak dark squares, because after white's next move, which is a really nice multi-purpose move, white starts to build a really devastating initiative on the king side. So over to you. If you're white in this position, what move would you play to combine attack and defense? Pause your videos. Okay, I think the best move in this position is rook f3, which white found. Nice job. Not only because it defends this pawn on e3, but this rook lift allows this rook to swing over and start pressuring black's king side. And watch what happens in the game. So I get the sense that black didn't really sense the danger. He didn't sense the impending doom on the king side. And he just kind of continued in a more mechanical approach. I want to move this bishop off the d file so that I can play the move d takes c4 rather, and open up this light squared bishop and solve this strategic issue in my position, which is this light squared bishop. But he didn't sense the danger. White plays rook g3. Okay, over to you now. Black's next move was a losing one. Okay, but I do think black can mount a reasonable defense to white's kingside initiative. So if you're black in this position, what would you play? Pause your videos. Okay, in the game, black played rook f8, which, needless to say, did not work out too well for him. I would have played in this position the retreating move, bishop e8. just to fortify this extremely weak and vulnerable point in black's position. But black didn't sense the danger. He played rook f8, which doesn't do much to support g6. It also, as we'll see, boxes the king in. It doesn't give black a free square for his king to maybe vacate to the queen side if things start getting crazy on the king side, which they do. So, over to you now. White found a really nice move in this position to finish off the attack. What should white play in this position? Okay, of course, white has gotten this rook into a really nice attacking position by this rook lift, by playing rook f3, rook g3. White should play the devastating move, rook takes g6, exclam, and black is busted. In the game, black played king h8. If black captures on g6, here comes the queen. Queen takes g6. Queen takes h7 is checkmate. But the work's not done here for white. Okay? Black saw white's idea, resisted the urge to capture on g6. That was good. And played the only move in the position, king h8. So, over to you. What should white play in this position to finish off a really nice attacking game? So this is a really great example of a clearance tactic, and this was the move that made me decide, okay, I want to review this game on your move. You can envision with this nice queen and bishop battery that white developed relatively early in the game, that there should be a mate on h7. If this rook wasn't here, queen h7 would be checkmate. So, your tactical antenna, they should be keyed in on this, and we should have some bells, some alarms going off, okay? We just need to remove this rook. If we can just clear this rook off of this b1 h7 diagonal, it's checkmate. And white finds this idea. Rook g8 check. Really, really nice move by white. If black captures with the king, queen takes h7 is checkmate. The rook doesn't help either because queen takes h7 is checkmate and black is lost. So thank you to Sai for submitting this really interesting game. I really had a lot of fun analyzing it and reviewing it. Opening play was a little bit imprecise. I think going forward against the French defense, you really want to play d4 and get that strong pawn duo in the center, but showed some really, really nice attacking ideas and was kind of a model game of showing how this diagonal, and specifically the relative strength of these light square bishops, is often the key decider in these French defense games. Black didn't do a good job with his light squared bishop, specifically that point when he could have retreated it to provide some defense. Meanwhile, white was really keyed in this idea, brought the bishop to a really nice diagonal, formed a battery with the queen, provoked a weakness, and it ultimately ended up in a decisive attack. So thanks again for that game. This will do it for this episode. Remember, if you want me to review your games, please submit them in the comments section of my blog, the link's in the description, or in the comments in my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching.